Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents. I'm Tracy S. Phillips, and today I'm talking with Maggie Smith, the author of Blindspot. Maggie now pursues her dream as a full-time writer. She hosts the podcast Hear Us Roar for the Women's Fiction Writers Association, which boasts over 110 episodes, and it's available on many platforms. She's a board member of the Chicago Writers Association, a managing editor of their online literary publication, The Right City magazine, and she lives in Milwaukee with her husband, Scott. Her debut novel, The Truth and Other Lies, was published in 2022 by 1016 Press, and her latest novel, Blindspot, was released in May this year. That's what we're here to discuss today. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. And this book is really great. There's so many little details and things that I wish we could get into
That
here
we
today
can't talk about.
that we can't talk about at all. But there is a lot that we can talk about. So, here's what we know. Rachel Matthews, the protagonist, is prosecutes scumbags for a living. She is used to being around criminals, and she's a single mother of Charlie, who is a teenage girl. She doesn't really date anyone and is a little bit relationship phobic. But when Rachel receives threatening voicemails, she becomes very wary. So let's set up the plot for our viewers.
Well, it takes place in Milwaukee, which is where I live. So those of you that are Wisconsinites, you'll see a lot of familiar faces and place names. Yeah, you've described it very well. She kind of got burned, lost the love of her life, was Charlie's father, and has raised her as a single mom, and has kind of let that part of her life go. She has a pretty famous criminal defense lawyer as a father, and so she has patterned herself after him and gone to law school and worked her way up. But she also is a very big advocate for women's rights, and she tends to take cases or be given cases in the kind of the crime unit, sexual crime unit. So she is prosecuting rape victims and sexual assault victims. So this hits pretty close to home when she has a stalker, because this is the kind of case that she's usually known for prosecuting. And of course, her first inclination is that it's somebody that she has prosecuted that's coming after her.
Well, that makes
And so
sense.
she's going through her old case files and trying to figure out who might have a vendetta against her and who might be threatening her.
Yeah. And they're leaving notes on her windshield and also calling and leaving voice
Yeah.
messages. But
Leaves her a bouquet, but it has kind of a creepy message with it. And so she's, at first, she's a strong-willed woman. She's just saying, oh, well, you're not going to ruin my day. Stop doing this. And they don't. And then then she gets a little bit more frightened and starts thinking, I really just can't ignore this. It's not stopping.
yeah.
And then she goes to the police because she's an officer of the court and she thinks the police will help. Probably knows at some level they won't be able to do much, but she also kind of knows she should at least report it and get it on the books. And then, of course, the police say, you have to tell your boss about this, which she's kind of reluctant to do. Like a lot of, she has an outside goal, a goal that we want her to reach, which is she's up for a promotion. And so
Right.
this is getting in the way of that. She doesn't really want her boss to know that she's getting distracted by this. So she'd rather not tell him, but she winds up telling him. The police say, you tell him or we will, he needs to
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So, and then it comes home to her that all of her workaholic efforts are just setting up the expectation she's going to continue to do that and work despite any of her personal problems, because her boss is just kind of like, well, I'm sure you'll be able to take care of that and let me know when you do, kind of thing.
Yeah. Don't you love
She's
people
not
like
getting
that?
very much support from anybody.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really want to turn to her father. Her brother's a lawyer too, and she really doesn't want the big guys coming in to save her or anything. She's not that kind of a woman. So she's really hoping she can kind of do this on her own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the dynamic between Rachel and her daughter Charlie. It's so perfect. Rachel is protective, but Charlie's trying to spread her wings, and then and she's doing theater and a lot of different things that Charlie or Rachel is, you know,
Rachel
really
thinks she
be.
wants to be a lawyer, you know.
Yeah.
What's
So
all
what? You want to
this?
be a theater person? Oh, and a new friend of theirs offers to create a sculpture of Charlie. So let's talk about that a little bit. Rachel's like,
Well,
no.
well, I think initially the new friend is called Liv, and she is more of a artist. She's a sculptor, and she meets. She wants to be friends with Rachel. Joins her book club. They meet at an awards dinner, and she really takes to Charlie, and she thinks she's beautiful and wants to sculpt her. And initially, Rachel isn't real sure about this. They've just met. Liv. Her husband is kind of a misogynist, weird. I mean, not weird, but he's kind of stuck on himself, and she doesn't get good vibes from him. So she's not sure she wants Charlie going over to their house and being around this Zach guy that's the Liv's husband. And so she's just got, and then later, as Liv and Charlie get closer, Rachel kind of has a little bit of jealousy of it because she's not getting along so well with her daughter, and they're clashing over what maybe Charlie wants to do, and maybe she's saying, "Well, maybe I'll take a year off and try travel the world."
Yeah.
Rachel's going, "Where are you getting the money for that?" And Charlie's going, "Well, I thought I'd use my college fund." I was like, "No, that is for college." So they certainly those scenes were pretty easy to write. I think I've been in both of those shoes as a 17-year-old and then a 40-year-old mother in both
Yeah.
shoes. Uh, the biggest confirmation comes when she comes home after a night out on the town, and Charlie's been out also, and Charlie comes down and she's dyed her hair pink, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Go wash that."
Yeah. And I've been on
All
that.
those typical things that a mother says, as long as you're living in my house, it's my rules, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's reverting to the worst of the mother syndrome.
Yeah, no, I was the daughter that dyed her hair purple.
Ah,
So I've been there. It was so perfect too. And there's this thing about Liv and Zach too. Their relationship is clearly like the dynamics are off,
yes,
right?
there's quite a power. Liv appears to be very under his thumb. He appears to be very controlling. Rachel suspects he may even be abusing her physically. He
Right.
certainly seems to abuse her emotionally. He seems to be a cheater and kind of not hiding the fact that he's flirting around with other women. And so there is a little bit of Rachel would never put up with that from a relationship, and she stands up to him when he tries to come on to her. But she also wonders why Liv is putting up with it, and
Right.
but they don't know each other that well. It's a new relationship, a new friendship, so she doesn't want to overstep her bounds, but she also wants to give Liv the feeling that, if you do need help, I'm here and I know people in the
Right.
system that can help you with this.
Right. Exactly.
So it's a
So
complicated dynamic. We've got several different people
yeah,
getting
for sure.
introduced here.
And the threatening notes and messages keep coming. And as a single mother, I think I'd be scared out of my wits that, my high school kid would be, at danger as well. Um, and then speaking of high school, this guy who like walks into her life, Max, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, Wisniewski?
Yep. Mhm.
Wisniewski
Good old
is is
Polish
a
name.
old friend from high school that just like shows up out of nowhere, and um my radar is like, oh my God, he's the stalker, you know. But he says he's a detective and he wants to help. He wants to insert himself into the investigation. So tell viewers a little bit about this developing relationship?
Well, this is kind of a little bit romantic subplot going on. He's somebody that she had kind of a crush on in high school. He was a loner. He was somebody that rode a motorcycle and went downtown, hung out at the blues bars and stuff like that. Didn't seem to care what people thought of him. He was pretty independent as a high schooler. They run into each other in a diner. He's just recently moved back to Milwaukee from New York, where he was a cop, and he has been here for about a year, and he's a private detective. And so they're just really catching up. I mean, he's just kind of saying, "Oh, Rachel, remember me from high school?" And yeah, she remembers him, and she's kind of thinking, "And you got a lot cuter. You've been to the gym."
Yeah.
Did you always have that dimple? We see that, oh, well, she's not totally dead to romance here. And so, and she kind of thinks, well, I was looking to try and shut this stalker down. Maybe this is a guy that I can have help me if the police can't help me. And so she feels out with her brother and some other people a little bit about him before she just hires him on the spot, and finds out he has a good reputation. And so she sets him on the trail of going through the files and researching some people with his expertise, and hoping that they'll kind of work as a team to try and find this person. So there is a romantic feelings on her part that are developing a little bit, aren't going too far, but there's some nostalgia going on as well, of thinking back about where did my life go off the rails, and what if I had made some different choices? A lot of people at 40 begin thinking those kinds of thoughts, and she's
Yeah.
not immune to that. So
Yeah. No, not at all. Um, so as the story progresses, Rachel finds herself at the scene when a murder takes place. And it starts looking really bad for her and her detective friend. Way to ramp up the tension, Maggie. I was like, "Huh, what?"
then we're only halfway through.
I know. So since I don't want to give anything else away, we have to switch topics here.
Well, I usually say, up until the midpoint, which is where the murder occurs, the story question is, who is stalking Rachel and why?
Right,
And after the murder, the question is entirely different. The question is, who is framing her for murder?
right,
And who is behind all this? The why becomes much more important, because she realizes this is a much longer and more complicated game than she thought she was playing.
right. Exactly. Yeah. So, what is your process like? Are you a plotter or a pantser? Did you like plot out this whole intricate thing before you
I did.
started?
Well, I didn't plot it all out, but I certainly had the tent poles of where I was going with it. It kind of started with the idea of not always knowing who people really are. Having
Mm,
That's where the name comes from Blindspot, is that we have a blind spot sometimes with people that we think are one thing and they turn out to be another. And so I was wanting to play with that idea. I was wanting to explore, could I write a suspense? Could I plant red herrings? Could I plant clues? So I didn't have it all planned out. I wrote it all the way through and then went back and seeded some of the plot twists and things like that. So I didn't have it all planned out in the beginning, but I had the general outline. And yes, I kind of used the Save the Cat outline, which is very similar to Hero's Journey and a lot of other story structure methods. So
right.
yes, plotter, plotter all the way. I don't want to waste any more time. It's hard enough to write a novel without knowing where you're going.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I like the discovery of pantsing. So I mean, I might have the idea in mind and most of the structure in place, but I like to see where my characters will take me to.
Well, I do
So,
have one anecdote that I can tell that isn't really giving anything away per se, is there is a scene later on in the novel where Charlie and her are going to a grave, and there is fresh flowers on the grave. Now,
mhm.
when I sat and typed and they see fresh flowers on the grave, I thought, oh, I wonder who left those fresh flowers. The author in me is saying, wait a minute. I have a little pad beside me. I'm going, story question that you've just raised that you need to answer sooner or later. Sooner or later, you have to figure out who's leaving those flowers. And so the rest of the novel, I'm kind of thinking, who is leaving those flowers? I had a sense of who I thought it was, and then I promptly said, well, no, that person would not, that isn't fitting with their personality. So now I either have to go back and take those flowers out, or I have to figure out who could be leaving them. And I kind of like that idea. And
Yeah,
in fact, the caretaker at the cemetery thinks she's the one that's been leaving the flower. She comes in and he says, "Oh, you're finally here. Do you want the receipts for the?" And she has no idea what he's talking about because
right.
she's the one that's been sending the flowers. And so that was an example of a pantser kind of moment where I just went, "Oh, I didn't see that coming, and now I have to answer that question."
Yep. Yeah.
But I
Um,
had a character that wound up being a perfect fit for that. So
and it worked out. It all fit and you made it work. So,
yeah,
yeah, awesome. When it comes to building tension, um, do you feel like you do that in the first or the second draft?
I didn't really do like a first draft all the way through. I tend to be somebody that writes and then I kind of go back and edit it. So I'm kind of editing all along the way. Uh,
Yeah,
and I I don't rem there were certainly things I went back and added tension that was not the big tent poles, but the little things, or sometimes it was synergy, like in the beginning, the policeman says, you need to up your home security. So she has a security company come in and do an assessment and show her where she's vulnerable in her house. And one of the things they do is kind of pop open the back door, the patio door. And she thinks, oh my gosh, we've been here for 8 years and I thought we were safe and we're not at all. And so later on, she is where she needs to break in somewhere. And I thought, oh, she learned how to break in when she saw that security guy do that. So it's interesting how sometimes synergies come to you like that. You have
yeah,
that seed that you plant, and maybe nothing comes of it. I could have never had her break in, and then that would have just been what it
right.
was. But it was able to then, key back to
Feed
the
a different plot point.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just always ask because I feel like all of our processes are so different,
Mhm.
and there's no one right way to get there. Um,
I go back and add things that add to tension that are small, like I had her driving and then I added that it was raining,
yeah,
and that there was a traffic jam and things like that. So there's a little bit of unease going on, even though it's not central to the plot. Those kinds of tension things I went back and added.
yeah. Um, so and also the theme of spousal abuse runs through this story. As we talked about the one relationship that was a little bit off. Um, excuse me. And you have a link at the end of the book to the Take Back the Night organization. Can you share just a little bit of information about this group or information where people can reach out if they're,
Sure.
yeah,
I published the phone number in the back of the book, but I'll publish it now too. 567-742-8837 is their hotline for legal assistance for victims of sexual abuse. They also have other hotlines and advice and counseling for psychological kinds of things that might be going on. So the Take Back the Night organization is the largest one I've found in the United States, and they have chapters everywhere. And they sponsor protests, they sponsor marches, they sponsor legislation. They are a nonprofit, so they get in donations and then provide services to victims. I was amazed when I was doing the research for this that like 1 in 3 women in the United States at some time have been stalked. Men too are stalked. So it's really quite a pervasive um,
Problem.
problem going on in our
Yeah.
society, and not much that the legal system can do much about until an actual law is broken, and then of course it oftentimes is a violent kind of an assault at that point. So you would hope that we could maybe do something before then. But
Right.
certainly the social media and the internet and all that has kind of exacerbated that problem.
Yeah. I believe that they do. Yeah. But I think it's good that writers like you can also um, promote, these organizations and just, have it out there that this is available if people need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened to coincide. April and May were sexual assault awareness months, and that was about when my book was coming out. So I also thought, well, this would be a way that I could also post on social media about this organization and help them have their visibility raised, and at the same time kind of tie in to what's going on in my book.
Yeah. Oh, and I heard that you did an interesting marketing campaign for your launch. What was that about?
Well, when I was trying to get early reviews, and so I bought about 50, I think, advanced copies to give to primarily to bookstagrammers because I'm primarily on Instagram. And I was struck all the time with they would weekly say, I got all these books, and there'd be like 10 books, book mail day. And as a writer, I'm thinking, you're not going to be able to read all those books. And my book is one of those. How do I get my book to be the one you want to read? So I bought some bright blue envelopes, kind of to go with the color of my book. And on the outside, I put spoiler alert, do not read this until you finish the book. And I sealed it. I got those little kindergarten stickers and sealed it with a big star on the back and put it with the book. And sure enough, a lot of people, when they posted about it, said, well, I am going to read this book because I want to see what's inside that envelope. And I thought it was such a cool idea that cost virtually nothing. And inside was behind the curtain scenes, my last scene or next to last scene in the book, but the last major kind of scene, I took and based somewhat on a famous last scene from a famous movie. And so that's one of the first behind the scenes things I tell about is what the movie was and what I was thinking about and how I kind of see this as very similar to that scene. Then I talk about one character that kind of developed over time and became a different kind of character than I thought they were going to be. And so I talk about the evolution of that character. I talk a little bit about the Easter eggs that I planted and how things came together and dovetailed. So it was fun. I had one Instagrammer who direct messaged me and said, I have to read your book next because my 8-year-old keeps walking around with this envelope and say, have you read this book yet, Mommy? Because I want to see what's inside here. I think he thought there was a dollar bill or something.
Yeah, yeah. Super prize.
So now I try and like if people write me, I will email them the behind the scenes, Word document, and then I give it out at the launch party. And anytime I send a book out on a giveaway or something, anytime I have a face to face with somebody or I'm sending them the book, paperback book, I will include that envelope in there.
Yeah.
So a clever marketing idea that I thought now everyone will do it. So I'll have to think of something else.
No, I thought it was great. My biggest question is how the heck do you get Instagrammers' mail address? Don't you don't
Well,
have to give that up, but
they give it to me. Well, in this case, most of these people came from blog tour operators, so
ah,
they gave me the
the
addresses.
info. Yeah, cool.
That's
Um,
one of the things I have loved about switching genres from women's fiction to suspense is that suspense is so much easier to market to because there were two blog companies that specialize in this. There's Facebook pages that specialize in this. Women's fiction is a little bit more amorphous,
Yep.
and it's a little harder to market to and find people that specialize in that. But suspense is pretty cut and dried. You can find people.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and as a full-time author, so what is coming up for you? What are you working on now?
Oh my goodness, I'm just now marketing this one.
I know.
I want some time off.
Oh, okay. Well,
No, I don't know. I do have an idea for the next book. Tentatively, I'm calling it All in the Family, and it's a kidnapping story. And it's coming out of the fact that my stepdaughter is now with her new husband of a couple of years. They are traveling in a renovated school bus throughout the country, and they're being nomads for the time being, and stopping and working every once in a while. And right now they're in the Pacific Northwest, but at one time they were in Mexico, and they don't always make what I might view as wise decisions. Sometimes they go into situations that seem like they might be a little bit dangerous, and so the what if author in me is going, what if they got kidnapped and held for ransom? And my husband and I were the ones with the money that they turned to get the ransom and all that kind of.
right.
You can play that out a
I
little bit.
know we tend to like think there's so much danger. What if this happened?
And I've always, the first two books I've written have been only a single point of view, first person point of view. So this one would be two points of view. I'm spreading my wings a little bit. So it'd be the stepdaughter and the stepmother in the same time period, but in two different locations. So that's what I'm noodling around with, but I haven't started writing any of it yet. And as we mentioned, I would be plotting it. But right now I'm just taking the summer off to market this book and noodle around with the third book.
Yeah, that
And I
sounds
have a
great.
podcast and I have other things I'm involved.
Yeah, absolutely you do. Um, and as a what is your normal day like as far as your writing? And now if you're focusing on writing, do the writing
I usually do it in the morning, but not the
Mhm.
real early morning. I wake up, about 8 o'clock or so and ease into the day with breakfast and coffee, and I play Wordle and Spelling Bee and get my brain kind of started. And then I usually write until lunch. Um, from a generative standpoint, I might in the afternoon do some plotting or some revision, but mainly I would leave the afternoon, which is a lower energy time for me, to marketing, posting on social media, catching up with things I need to do in the writing community. I've got a lot of different things I'm involved in the writing community itself. So those would be the afternoon when I'm not as energetic as I might be.
Yeah. And so I mean we treat this as a job, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
And then I usually take the weekend off and I read. I read
Yeah.
a lot, and watch movies. I'm a big consumer of I'm a consumer of stories, and usually that's movies and TV and long form drama on cable and things like that.
Yeah. Well, where can our viewers find your books, or where can they reach out to you if they have questions or want to chat about your book?
Well, my website is really simple, Maggie Smith Writer, WRITER.com. There are a couple of other Maggie Smiths. One is an actress in England. One is a poet in the United States, so don't get us mixed up. But I am Maggie Smith Writer, and am on primarily Instagram under Maggie Smith Writes, WRITES. So you can direct message me there. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website. My book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and at your local bookstore and on bookshop.org. I do have an audiobook out that is available exclusively on Audible and Apple. And there's an ebook as well. So we have all three of the formats that you can pick it up.
Yay.
And
And it's so
if you're
good.
local in Wisconsin or upper Chicago area, which is not too far from my house, I'm glad to zoom in or visit your book club, library, women's association, whatever. I love talking about my book, and I love talking about writing, and I love talking to people who have read the book because then we get to kind of dish about the all the secrets behind the
Yeah,
scene.
you've got a great list of questions for the readers afterwards for your book clubs. So
It's a totally different conversation than we had today because you get to say, well, when I decided to do this, and this is the clue I left you for that, and so
yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Maggie. This has been great. Highly recommend Blindspot. Um,
well, thank you for having me, Tracy. It was great.
yeah. So we'll see you around, and we're both in Wisconsin, so hopefully I'll see you at an event soon.
Yeah. Goodbye, Blackbird writers.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me on.